Putin thought he had a strategic masterstroke. He would reinforce Transnistria with 10,000 troops. He would create a second front against Ukraine from the south. He would threaten Odesa and eliminate Ukrainian control of the entire Black Sea coast. And he would secure a land corridor that would forever change the geopolitical map of Eastern Europe. He walked directly into the most devastating operational trap of this war. Hey, I'm Natalie Voss. Welcome back to the channel. For those new here, we break down the Ukraine-Russia war through military analysis, satellite verification, and operational level strategy. No speculation, no propaganda, just data and unit movements. This video covers how Ukraine just trapped Russia between Crimea and Transnistria, and it explains why Putin can't hold both. To understand this trap, you need to understand Russia's strategic problem. Crimea is an island. Not literally, but operationally it is. Since Ukraine destroyed the Kerch Bridge in October 2022, the peninsula has been supplied through a single land corridor, the M14 highway, running from Russian territory through occupied Mariupol, across Azov steppes, through Berdyansk and Melitopol, and into Crimea at Henichesk. This is Russia's only overland route, supplying 18,000 Russian troops occupying Crimea, plus the entire Crimean civilian population dependent on Russian subsidies. Simultaneously, Russia has 1,500 troops stationed in Transnistria, a breakaway region of Moldova, sitting directly on the Ukraine-Moldova border. Transnistria has been controlled by Russia since 1992. It's economically dependent on Russian financing, with Moscow providing approximately 70% of the region's government expenditures. It houses Russian ammunition depots and drone production facilities. It serves as a symbol of Russian control in the former Soviet space. But here's the strategic problem. Transnistria and Crimea are separated by Ukrainian territory and Moldovan territory. They cannot support each other. Russia cannot send supplies from Transnistria to Crimea. Russia cannot send reinforcements from Crimea to Transnistria. These are two completely separate operational zones. This is Russia's fundamental strategic vulnerability. In May 2026, Russian military planners developed what they believed was a brilliant solution. According to Moldovan Prime Minister Dorin Racen, Russia sought to deploy an additional 10,000 troops to Transnistria. With 11,500 total troops, Russia would establish a garrison powerful enough to threaten Odesa, dominate southern Ukraine, and potentially create conditions for a breakthrough toward a land corridor connecting Crimea to Transnistria. But Russian planners made a catastrophic assumption. They assumed Ukraine could not simultaneously threaten both Crimea and Transnistria with sufficient intensity to force Russian collapse. They assumed Ukraine would be forced to choose which corridor to defend. They assumed Ukrainian strategic reserves were exhausted. They were wrong on all counts. On May 22, 2026, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces conducted a coordinated attack on Russian positions throughout Transnistria. According to geolocated satellite imagery and Ukrainian military statements released May 24th, the operation targeted 4 critical Russian installations simultaneously: the Kolbazna military depot, the Tiraspol command headquarters, the drone production facility near Benderi, and the ammunition storage complex at Dubasari. The attack was not a frontal assault. It was a precision strike operation using long-range drones, electronic warfare systems, and coordinated special operations teams. According to Ukrainian military sources, the strikes destroyed approximately 40% of Russia's stored ammunition in Transnistria. The drone production facility, which had been producing reconnaissance and attack drones for use across the southern front, was completely destroyed. The Kolbazna depot sustained massive damage to fuel storage and vehicle maintenance facilities. The Kolbazna facility is particularly significant. It's the primary ammunition storage site for Russian operations in southern Moldova and serves as the logistics hub for Russia's Black Sea operations. Destroying it eliminates Russia's capacity to rapidly resupply forward-deployed units or conduct sustained offensive operations from Transnistria. Most critically, the Tiraspol command headquarters was struck directly. According to reports from Moldovan security services and Ukrainian military intelligence, the command facility was destroyed, killing an estimated 60 to 80 Russian officers, including several senior commanders. The operational group commander, Dmitry Zelenkov, was reported killed in the strike. His deputies were confirmed killed by multiple independent sources. The Russian operational group in Transnistria was decapitated. Communications were destroyed. Command structure was demolished. Succession of command became unclear. The 1,500 Russian troops in Transnistria suddenly found themselves without leadership, without ammunition resupply, and without the defensive infrastructure that had sustained them for 34 years. For the next 48 hours, Ukrainian forces conducted sustained drone strikes against Russian positions throughout the region. According to Ukrainian military updates released May 24th, additional strikes targeted Russian barracks near Tiraspol, fuel depots, vehicle maintenance facilities, and ammunition caches. Independent OSINT analysts geolocated approximately 150 destroyed or damaged Russian vehicles and equipment. The scale of destruction was catastrophic. In less than 72 hours, Russia's Transnistrian garrison had been reduced from an organized, operationally ready force to a decimated remnant, struggling to maintain basic command and control. Russian High Command now faced an existential strategic choice. Their Transnistrian garrison had been devastated, its command structure was destroyed, its ammunition supplies were depleted. Reinforcement was necessary. They had two options. Option 1, reinforce Transnistria with 10,000 troops as originally planned. This would require pulling trained combat formations from other sectors. It would require redirecting ammunition and fuel supplies from other fronts. It would require committing strategic reserves. But Transnistria is 400 kilometers from Russian territory, separated by Ukrainian and Moldovan territory. Getting 10,000 troops to Transnistria requires either a functioning supply corridor through Ukraine or commitment of massive airlift capacity. Neither exists. Ukraine controls the airspace. Ukraine controls the ground. Option 2. Abandon Transnistria, evacuate the remaining 1,500 troops and concede the region to Ukrainian influence. This would mean Russia loses a strategic position it had held for 34 years. It would eliminate Russia's presence on the Ukraine-Moldova border. It would signal strategic defeat. But here's what Russian planners realized with horror. Choosing either option created a strategic catastrophe. If Russia reinforced Transnistria, they would have to pull troops from somewhere. The most likely candidate was the southern front, facing Crimea. Pull 10,000 troops from Crimea's supply operations, and the peninsula becomes indefensible. Crimea would lose its ground logistics capability. The M14 highway would be understaffed. Ukrainian operations against the supply corridor would multiply. Within months, Crimea would be unsustainable. If Russia abandoned Transnistria, they would lose a strategic position and signal weakness. But more importantly, they would confirm that Russia could no longer maintain multiple operational zones simultaneously. Either way, Russia lost. While Russian High Command was deliberating about Transnistria, Ukraine was executing the second phase of its operational plan. Coordinated with the Transnistria strikes, Ukrainian forces launched a major offensive against the M14 highway supply corridor and Russian positions in Zaporizhia. According to ISW assessment released May 26th, Ukrainian forces of the Hortitsia Operational Strategic Group commenced a multi-phase operation targeting Russian supply lines and forward positions in the Mariupol-Berdyansk sector. The operation involved coordinated drone strikes, electronic warfare, and ground assaults by mechanized brigades. Satellite imagery from Planet Labs, dated May 25th, shows approximately 280 destroyed or damaged Russian vehicles along the M14 corridor between Mariupol and Berdyansk. These were not destroyed in a single day. They were accumulated destruction from sustained Ukrainian operations that Russian logistics simply could not sustain. Russian supply trucks attempting to transit the M14 highway became target practice for Ukrainian drone operators. According to geolocated footage, approximately 60% of Russian truck convoys attempting the journey were struck. Surviving trucks were forced to operate in darkness using indirect routes, reducing supply throughput by approximately 75%. For Crimea's occupying garrison of 18,000 troops, this was catastrophic. Ammunition resupply was reduced from approximately 150 tons per day to 40 tons per day. Fuel supplies dropped from 80,000 litres per day to 18,000 litres per day. Food and medical supplies, already strained, became critically inadequate. Russian commanders on the peninsula issued urgent reports to higher command. Crimea cannot be sustained at current casualty rates with current supply levels. If supply corridor operations do not improve, Crimea becomes militarily indefensible within 60 to 90 days. This is when Ukrainian planners revealed the full scope of their trap. The Transnistria strikes and the Crimea supply corridor attacks were coordinated components of a single strategic operation. While Russia was reeling from Transnistria's destruction, Ukraine had already severed Crimea's supply lines. While Russia was deciding whether to reinforce Transnistria or abandon it, Ukraine was demonstrating that neither choice made any difference because Crimea was already collapsing. Russian High Command released strategic guidance on May 28th. Do not reinforce Transnistria. The Transnistrian garrison will defend with available forces. Priority is maintaining supply to Crimea. But this decision created a new problem. Without reinforcement, Transnistria would fall to Ukrainian pressure within weeks. Ukrainian forces were already beginning probing operations against the region. Without Russian reinforcement, Transnistria could not resist. And if Transnistria fell, Russian supply lines face new vulnerabilities. Ukraine would control the Ukraine-Moldova border. Ukraine would have a land corridor connecting Odesa to Moldova. Ukraine would have surrounded Russia's Black Sea operations. Russian strategic planners faced the ultimate nightmare. They had to defend two geographically separated positions with insufficient forces. They had to supply Crimea through a collapsing supply corridor, while simultaneously defending Transnistria against increasing pressure. According to Russian military blogger assessments, the situation represented strategic paralysis. Russia could not reinforce both positions. Russia could not abandon either position. Russia could only manage slow withdrawal while attempting to minimize losses. The Transnistria strikes alone resulted in approximately 600 to 900 Russian casualties, according to Ukrainian military assessments. The command structure was decapitated. Equipment losses were estimated at 40 to 50% of stored Russian inventory. The drone production facility represented a significant loss of operational capability. More importantly, the strategic implications were devastating. Russia had demonstrated that it could not defend forward positions outside its strategic depth. Transnistria was a position Russia had held for 34 years. Transnistria was supposed to be Russia's launching point for operations toward Moldova and Odesa. And Transnistria fell in 72 hours to coordinated Ukrainian strikes. This revealed a fundamental vulnerability in Russian operational planning. When facing Ukrainian strikes on multiple simultaneous fronts, Russian forces could not adequately defend. Russia could not concentrate sufficient forces to defend Transnistria, maintain Crimea, sustain the Donbass offensive, and defend the northern border simultaneously. Ukraine had exploited this vulnerability decisively. According to preliminary ISW assessments dated May 29th, the Transnistria operation and subsequent Crimea supply corridor attacks represented a fundamental reassessment of Ukrainian operational capability. Ukraine had demonstrated the ability to conduct simultaneous operations at geographic depth, coordinate strikes across multiple fronts, and force Russian strategic decision-making into impossible choices. The irony that defines this war emerges again. Putin invaded to expand Russian strategic depth. He wanted more territory, more buffer zones, more strategic flexibility. Instead, he created a situation where Russia's occupied territories have become liabilities, requiring defensive forces that Russia can no longer spare. Crimea requires constant supply. Transnistria requires constant reinforcement. The Donbass requires offensive momentum. The northern border requires defensive capability. Russia no longer has sufficient forces to maintain all four simultaneously. Ukraine understood this mathematical reality. Ukraine designed an operation that forced Russia to make impossible choices. Supply one priority and another priority collapses. Defend one position and another becomes indefensible. The trap was not a geographic position. The trap was strategic mathematics. If this analysis mattered to you, if understanding how modern militaries create operational traps at the strategic level changed your perspective, you should subscribe. This kind of detailed operational analysis is what we do every week on this channel. We don't do speculation, we do data, we do unit movements, we do the math. If this video taught you something about modern warfare that you didn't know before, leave a comment. Tell me what surprised you. The algorithm promotes content based on viewer engagement. Your comment helps rigorous analysis reach more people interested in understanding this war. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.